today we're going to talk about homeschooling on a budget, which I'm really excited about. It comes up often here at Rainbow. You know, we look at the catalog and we see all the sparkly fun things. We want everything.
One
right?
of everything.
Yes. Yeah, one of everything. And it's hard to figure out, how do I narrow this down? How do I really focus on what I actually need? And so that's part of what we do here at Rainbow. But we actually had a question recently. Someone said, can you guys talk about how to homeschool on a budget? How do I find curriculum on a budget? And so we're going to do that today. And we have a special guest with us we're thrilled to have here today. And she is one who's lived this out in her own life, and you're no stranger to YouTube. Tara, will you introduce her formally for us?
This is Ware. So again, she has a YouTube channel, Under the Median. And I love your tagline, which is joy and abundance on a shoestring budget.
Love
Did I get that right?
Yep.
And that's what we're trying to do is, hey, you can have a homeschool full of joy and actually abundance, even if you don't have much to spend. Hope is also a recently retired homeschool mom of 4 boys. So lots and lots of experience in this area. And we're excited to jump into it and figure out how to spend less, but get a very abundant homeschool.
So you're an expert in this, and we know this. We've seen this firsthand in your life, Hope.
We're declaring you an expert today. No pressure.
So help us today, Hope. You have so many practical ideas. So help us to think of what are some just overall guiding principles that you used in your homeschool, because you're so frugal and you were always keeping in mind budget. What are some things you did to just help make sure that you didn't break the bank? How were you careful? What were your guiding principles?
Well, one of the things that I always like to tell people is you can't have it all, and even if you did have it all, you couldn't use it all.
Right.
And I think in this day and age, like, there's so many opportunities, there's so many options that it kind of just makes your head rattle, and you're like, it's almost like, I'll take one of these and one of these and one of these, and you have to really stop that impulse, and you have to get it down to, what do I actually need? And I always tell people, like, one of my favorite words in the whole universe is prioritize, because I am a huge proponent of creating a list and making sure it's prioritized. So you're going to start out by making a list of everything that you feel like you need for your homeschooling in the next 12 months. And then you're going to make sure that you say, is this necessary, something we absolutely have to have? Or is this something that's kind of nice, like if we have a little bit of extra money, this is where we're going to put that money? Or is this something that's totally optional? Like, you get done, you got $200 left over, and you're like, oh, this would be great to purchase. But having that list prioritized, so you know immediately these are the most important needs, because otherwise you're going to spend all of your money on the things that are just kind of the extra things, and get down to, you know, oh, we need a phonics curriculum, and I've already spent most of my budget on this. So make sure you're getting the most important things first.
I know for me, some of that priority involved like starting with your oldest child. So if you have an 8th grader, their programs and their materials are more important than the 3rd grader. And going on down, hopefully if you homeschool for many years, you have things coming up to reuse. But I always thought the oldest kid gets the priority, since they're the oldest and have more academic needs.
I like what you said about making sure, you know, sometimes you get to the end and you're like, oh, I kind of forgot about math. I got everything else, but I forgot about math and language arts. And I think especially in those younger years, you know, that's where we have to focus our time and attention. You know, if we can get the language arts and the math knocked out, it's like, oh, we can find ways to budget real easily with science and history and all those other things, right? Those are a little bit easier for us to put together than a math curriculum and a language arts curriculum.
I think remembering too that there's a lot of options available. You don't have to have the newest, the shiniest, the brightest, the one that everybody's talking about. And this happened when we started homeschooling 25 years ago. My husband walked in. I said, we can't homeschool. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, we can't get this phonics curriculum. It's the one everybody uses. It's $225. My entire budget is $300 for their whole year. I can't. So we just can't do this.
Kids won't read.
And he looked at me. He said, is there not something else we could use? And I said, well, I suppose I could look around, and I found Alpha-Phonics.
There we go. We still sell it.
You guys, this one. We're gonna find it. This is the best, most amazing.
It's brand new.
Was this your favorite?
I used this. I found it on a used board, $10 postpaid. I used it to teach 3 out of my 4 boys
That's awesome.
how to read. I used it again and again and again. So don't get discouraged if you feel like, because we get in this comparison game, right? oh, such and such has this curriculum, that's what I need to get.
Yeah.
And looking around and looking at all the options, call Rainbow Resource. They have wonderful ladies here who will walk you through what your various options are, especially if you tell them, this is my budget.
Yes.
And they'll help you to find something that is within that price point in order to make sure that you fill all of the needs.
Well, I think there's that feeling too, like more money is automatically better, right? In all areas of life. I spend more money, it's quality. And sometimes, you know, you get what you pay for.
Sometimes it's true.
But if you could talk to consultants and you learn about the homeschooling world and realize actually there are a lot of things that aren't that expensive but are extremely valuable and extremely helpful.
And sometimes saving money means buying once, but buying well, and making sure, hey, this is something that I'm going to have to invest in this, but I can use this for all 4 of my kids. You know, something that's going to last me through the years.
And I think especially in K through 8, there's a lot of overlap, right? So you can buy a lot of the things that we did, like we bought one spine book for history. We would buy one book that got the job done as far as laying out, this is what happened during this period of history. We use this is another
Going back
book
like old school homeschool
Yeah.
too.
we used
Little old
again
school.
and again and again. And we would read the material from that and then say, what else do we want to learn about? Where do we want to go in depth? And then we would head to our favorite place in the whole wide world, which was the public library. And we would fill up our book bag every single week with books. And we would, here's the other thing that I would suggest, and it works super well for us, rotate between fiction, nonfiction. And we would just go back and forth between fiction, nonfiction, fiction, nonfiction. And that seemed to make sure that we got a really well-rounded perspective on whatever that period of history was that we were studying. And then the kids notebooked.
Yes,
They would
notebooks.
do project-based learning. One of
awesome.
the best ways to homeschool and one of the least expensive ways to homeschool.
I love
And there are
that.
materials to help us with project-based homeschooling. I mean, you don't have to invent it all yourself, although some people like to do that. But there are a lot of curriculum that are based on, hey, we're going to give you like the skeleton, and you can fill it in. I think you had something, Nancy, that was kind of similar to that.
Yeah, I love
history.
I love this, and I feel like this is a hidden gem.
yeah.
Have you seen this? Not a lot of people know about this. It's learning American history through literature. So a lot of people have heard of learning language arts through literature. This is the same publisher. I love this. You can use it for all your elementary kids, and what it does is it uses living books. So you can go to the library and you can get, you know, the chapter books or the picture books for your kids depending on their age, and then everything else is kind of laid out for you. So it's got craft ideas, recipe ideas, field trip ideas, everything that you need to add on to that, a little timeline you can keep track of. So something like this, I think this is under $30.
Science, that's the other area that we consistently bought one textbook and we did several different levels with it. Jay Weil, I cannot say enough about.
You love him. Yeah, he is so good.
We used every single level of this.
Did you really?
Yes, when we got to the
Wow.
end, one of my kids cried.
Oh.
I'm not going to say which one, but they did. They were like,
They wanted more.
The testimony there.
They did.
good more Jay Weil.
4 boys, one of them cried. And they were genuinely disappointed when we got to the end of
They
that
just
series.
loved it so much.
But they each kept their own science notebook. They took notes. They drew photos.
Yeah.
Jay's experiments really worked. I was notorious to be the mom that, like, my experiments wouldn't work. All of these experiments worked. I'm just saying.
That is a big thing.
That is, and Jay was great at giving options again.
Yes.
This is how your student can show, like, here's how a first grader can show they understand the material. Here's how a third grader, here's how a fifth grader. And that gave me such, I think the other thing was it really encouraged the boys. When you saw your brother who was in 6th grade filling out his notebook and you're in 2nd grade, you want to fill out your notebook. You want to
Yeah.
draw that picture of that
Right.
atom. You want to do those things so that you also have a nice looking notebook.
Well, what's cool about this program too is he offers his notebooking as PDFs for free on the
He
website
does.
too.
It's wonderful. You can print it out as you go and find a cheap resource for printing, and that is very generous of the company to do that.
But finding those spines, again, this might be not super cheap, but it's such a good value over the years. I think about it as like price per ounce going to the grocery store. It might look like a big box, but there's only this much, this much cornflakes in it.
Right.
And to find those programs that say, man, this might seem expensive, but there's so much in it, and it's going to really make your job easier as you teach your
There's
kids.
lasting value there for sure. So what are some other things that you did that helped you guys over the years? So you did some multi-level learning. You did a lot of combining. So using a spine and having each of the kids kind of break out and do their own little projects or their own little notebooks. You use the library a lot, which I think the library is such a treasure chest, but I do feel like a lot of people really don't know how to use it for all the resources that are there. How did you guys find the library kind of like a good partner for homeschooling?
One of the other things our library had was they had little learning kits.
Yes.
So if you were working on, let's say, learning to count to 100, they'd have this little like basket thing you would check out.
Those things that are too expensive to buy.
Yeah.
They're pricey.
It had a book. It had a little teacher's manual in there even. It had like a hands-on type activity, and they had them, you had to know to ask for them. But once you knew to ask for them, the librarians got to know us really well. They'd be like, oh, I was like, this is what we're working on. They're like, well, check out this kit. This works really well for that. The other, and nowadays, I think one of the things that people just need to be aware of is probably looking at options like Teachers Pay Teachers, because you can get little unit studies. So you buy your basic curriculum, and then you buy
little things,
various little things, and they're not terribly expensive to purchase. The other thing to look at is, I know in the state of Illinois, and we're talking to all kinds of different states here, so you want to check with like your state
requirements.
Make sure you look at their requirements, but then you want to look at like their tourism bureau. Sometimes you can get maps, you can get all kinds of different learning activities. We would go places, our kids were always the junior rangers, you know.
Oh, yeah.
You go to like state parks.
That's a great idea.
And they had like a little thing you could sign up with absolutely free. You did all these activities as you went through the park, and then you'd turn it in and they'd get a badge that said they were a junior ranger.
Like some states and some districts might give you a homeschooling status, like a teacher status. They'll give you extra privileges. Like, hey, if you are a homeschool teacher, we'll give you the discount, or we'll give you the free something like that. So just to keep asking around and saying, what else do you offer? I said our homeschool or our library gave us extended checkout as a homeschool teacher. So instead of after 2 weeks having to give it up, they'd say 6 weeks. You know, keep it longer, which was really helpful.
Yeah. The other thing ours gave us was more books. Yeah. Because we would max out our library card limit all the time, and they were like, oh, you're a homeschooler. You can have 40 instead of 20 every week.
You got special privileges.
This is great. I don't know if they do that anymore. The other thing we did is with your homeschool status, you can often go to museums and different sort of activities, and you can get in for free or a really reduced price. We went to a state of Illinois museum, and the Lincoln Museum, and we went online. We signed up as a school field trip, and they gave us lots of special perks because we were signed up as a private school taking our school field trip. So things like that are also very inexpensive to do. And look for the free days. Almost every museum around has a free day where you can go and just enjoy it. It's like a donation type thing, and you can go and it won't cost you anything.
I think one thing that's really neat is, you know, sometimes when we think about budgeting, we think about, oh, what I can't have, like my limitation. And really, sometimes budgeting can cause us to just be a lot more creative. We might not have to explore this option if we weren't on a budget. And so it can cause us to have that creativity. And I love some of these ideas you're sharing, because they're not things that we just think of off the top of our head. Like, oh, I should look and see what resources are available in my community. And it can encourage us to dig into our community and find what relationships can I build here, you know, with the librarian or with other homeschool families, maybe to work together, share resources, or have a co-op, you know, where we're all doing the same thing together. Those things can really save a lot of money.
We joined a lot of clubs in the community that cost us virtually nothing, but it gave my kids the opportunity to learn to work together as a group with other children. So those were really good too. One of the other things that we did was we looked around and tried to figure out what the missing links were. So we would buy basic curriculum, and I was like, well, what do I need? Oh, I know, I need some manipulatives they can use. So I would look online, download them, print them out, and then, because I couldn't really afford to have it laminated, I got clear contact paper.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And I would put it on both sides, and then you cut it out, just leave a margin of about 1/4 of an inch so it doesn't come unraveled and they don't come apart.
And a much cheaper way to do that.
Much less
It
expensive.
accomplishes the same goal.
A little bit of time consuming, but you know, I used those manipulators for multiple kids, and they still held up, and they cost me almost nothing.
I like that point too, because I think that sometimes it's a time versus money. You know, if you're willing to put in a little bit more time and do things a little differently, you can probably save a lot of money, but you've got to have just a little bit of time you're willing to give it, and it can make a big difference.
And it's fun for our kids to see us kind of investing in our own homeschool. For let's make our own flashcards, or let's make this instead of buying it pre-made. It kind of does encourage that spirit of creativity and you're more likely to like follow through with it. Sometimes you buy a stack of books, and if you don't crack them open, they're not any good, right? You don't actually use it. So I love what you said about you got to buy stuff you know you're going to use that's going to benefit your family.
Did you find that in your homeschool that your kids watching you guys be very resourceful and comparing and finding the best bang for your buck, did that impact them over the years? Like, do you feel like that they've kind of taken on some stewardship in their own lives and it's important to them as well?
I do think that that's the case. And one of the things that we did with our kids is we were very deliberate in giving them choices. That's the one thing I would say. Like, if you're just starting out homeschooling, if you have two curriculums and basically in your mind they're equal, let your student choose which one they're going to use, because then they will take ownership of it and they'll be super excited to get started in it. But then we also gave them other choices. As they got older, we gave them more and more choices. Then by the time they got to high school, because high school does tend to be very individualized. As much as we say, K through 8, you can use the same curriculum over and over again, and you can. By the time you get to high school, the path they're taking tends to be a little more individualized.
Their interests or their specialties, right?
So then you do tend to have to be a little more creative in finding opportunities for them that aren't going to cost you a lot of money. And our kids would take ownership of that, would be like, well, if you want to do this extracurricular activity, we will pay for the entrance and you'll pay for the uniform. And so by that point, they're earning a little bit of their own cash, and they learned to prioritize from that experience.
I think that is such a good example. My oldest son was in baseball, and he had been doing it for years, and it was getting kind of pricey, and we were running him around like crazy, and we kind of had the feeling, I'm not sure this is really that important to him. So we asked him in, 1 year, okay, hey, this year you're going to pay half of the fee, okay? And all of a sudden he was like, well, I'm not doing it then. It was like, oh, okay. Then, so I think that sometimes that brings it to the light. What's really important, when you have just a certain amount of money to spend, you really do have to prioritize and get down to what's the most important.
And we would tell them too, limit the number, because kids can, whether you homeschool or not, your kids can get on this merry-go-round of doing things, because there's a lot of opportunities. Like every day of the week, you're taking your student to do something. If you've got 3 or 4, students, you're going a lot of places. And we would say, you get to choose one this semester. Out of the top 3 that you're interested in, what's the one thing you really, really want to do? And once again, that teaches them to prioritize their decisions.
Right. And then you're more intentional with what you do, because you don't have all these things vying for your attention. You've really thought it through, and you've made the choice, this is what's important. So then you have, you don't have all the fluff stuff sitting around. It's like, this is what we've chosen, we're going to be really intentional with it.
And we're going to be grateful, grateful for what it is. And when I think about on a budget, and you mentioned with time versus money, but the common denominator is mom, or it's the adult in their life that's saying, I want to see you succeed. So even if you look at a curriculum and you go, oh, it's not that fancy, or it's not, doesn't have as many bells and whistles, it's not the newest thing in town, you got an adult who's sitting next to you saying, I want to see you learn this. And that's, I think, often one of those keys to success in our children, is having just our time that we give them and saying, let's do this, let's make this, we're going to make this science book work, whether it's, everything we want it to be or not.
Right. So that brings up another question. So you've mentioned that, as the kids get older, it gets a little bit harder to do that multi-level teaching, which we love that. It frees us up a lot in time, not only money, but time. But as they get older, that gets a little bit harder. But what were some priorities that you had in your homeschool as your kids got older, and how did you prioritize and budget for those? What were some things that you had to think hard about, but decided, you know what, this is worth investing? How'd you make those decisions?
One of the things we did, like by the time our kids got to junior high, definitely early high school, we were like, what is their bent? What is their natural, what direction are they going? So where we saw God leading them in the future, that was where we put our emphasis. And we would say, well, maybe we need to find an adult that does that for a living. Can you job shadow them for a few days to find out if that's really what you're interested in? Because sometimes it really wasn't. It just looked interesting, in a book or something they'd read. And so helping them narrow down their own stream of focus and figuring out ways that you can help them go in that direction without spending a lot of money. That's what we did.
That's a great idea. I think so many kids are leaving high school not knowing what they want to do. So starting to think about that, helping them to think about it, and having opportunities to go in and job shadow or talk to somebody who does it or go in and visit and see what it's like can really help guide them. That's great advice, Hope. So what are some programs, you told us a couple that you used that you felt really gave you a lot of bang for your buck, and you felt like those were very budget friendly. So the Alpha-Phonics, it was one book, and we have so many like that with phonics that you can buy the one, kind of like a handbook that you're going to use with every child, something like Teach Your Children to Read in 100 Easy Lessons or some of those. And I know many families do that. They buy it and they say, hey, this has worked great for all of my kids, and that $30 you spent is a great investment because you're using it over and over. Were there any other things that you can think of that were really had a lot of bang for your buck, or things that you felt like that was really a good investment?
Yeah, I'll show a couple of them, but what you said just reminded me to add that I use Alpha-Phonics differently with each child.
Oh, so there was still room for flexibility there.
Absolutely.
Which is so key because our kids are all so different. So even though we might not have a huge budget, we can still be creative in how we make it fit and tailor it to each one of them.
And I would lean it toward their learning styles. So my oldest son is an auditory learner. He just wanted to hear things like me read to him for hours on end. And my second son he's hands-on. So I had to create manipulatives to go along with the Alpha-Phonics, whereas my oldest son just really didn't care.
Need them.
He didn't care at all. And so taking that basic curriculum and tweaking it for every child, you should expect to do that. Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of other things that we used. We loved Rod and Staff.
This is Pathway.
That's Pathway.
That's
Pathway
love
Readers.
those too. So economical.
Very inexpensive.
Under $10 for the reader.
Oh, absolutely. And we used these over and over again.
Did you use Rod and Staff?
We did. We used the math up till about junior high, and then we switched to Math UC, which we're actually real happy with. Story of the World is another, like these. All right, so there's a set of 4 of these
like
textbooks.
one volume for 1 year.
Really inexpensive, once again. So we did a 4-year history rotation, and this was perfect for that. But then it comes this book. Not terribly expensive, but
no, it's not. It's under
so
$30.
many ideas. It's a wealth of information, isn't it?
Oh my gosh.
And so half the book is going to be your lesson ideas, your questions, your library lists. I use this for library lists. And since they're a library, I can order them all. I'm like, okay, whatever they recommended, I ordered all of them. But the last half is your coloring pages and activities, and these can be reproduced for each child. So whenever you have a program to say, hey, I can make copies of this for all the kids as many times as they need to.
And it gives you so much flexibility because depending on the ages of your kids, you may or may not do the coloring pages. You may choose to do the recipes. And if you have a kid like one of yours that loves to cook, you're going to end up doing all those recipes. So I love that it gives you so many options in there. You can just pick and choose what really fits your family the best.
And once again, it's an example of project-based learning, where your student takes the direction that they're really interested in and they run with it.
Yeah,
which makes them love learning, really love learning.
One that I grabbed was Lyrical Science. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. Do you know? You would love it because you love to sing.
Too late, Hope, sorry.
No, I got grandbabies coming up.
There
it's all
you
good.
go. You got to do it. So the Lyrical Science is just a whole bunch of songs, and they put the most important things you want your kids to know about science. So this one is human body, all the systems of the body put to music.
What?
It is so
cool.
fun. And it's just amazing because by the end of the year, your kids just know the stuff. It's like, hey, all they have to do is start singing it, and it's like it all comes really quickly. There is also a little workbook that goes with it. There's a textbook, a workbook, and then the song CD. But that's another nice option you can do as a family. And I think that not only are families often looking to save money, but they're looking to save time. And that multi-level teaching, doing things like this, where you're all together around the table, it also eliminates, 6 history books, and you're not juggling so much. So I think that's also a nice advantage, is the time saving, not just the money.
Yeah, anything that can be reused or reproduced is really helpful.
Yeah, exactly. So when you get a textbook like this, you're going to use it for all of your children, no matter how many you have. When you get something like this, hardback book, you're going to use it again and again. So the more books that you have that you can reuse, and the less that are going to be used up, and then you have to purchase them again. But I think you always have to ask yourself, do I have everything I need to teach? So if you're purchasing this, and we already recommended getting the activity guide that goes along with it, I would call Rainbow Resource and say, do I need this activity guide? Tell me what's in it. Because it's sometimes hard to tell in a catalog or online. It's like, what is this? Do I really need it?
And sometimes you get a little sampling of the pages, but it's not always enough to really tell.
Well, in Story of the World, it comes with the CD set, which I love the CD set. But you know what? My library had the CD set. So I'm like, I will borrow the CDs. I think one year I finally said, I want to own them. We're listening to them an awful lot. We can't hog this to ourselves all year.
Right.
But you'd be surprised at what the library would offer, even in those extra things.
Yes. Well, and I think that brings up a good point too. It's like we used the library a lot, but there were those times that it was like, no, this is something I really want to own because I want to be able to highlight, I want to be able to dog ear the pages, I want to pull it off the shelf at 9 p.m. at night. And I think that, there's those things, it's that weighing out like we're talking about. It's not that you can't spend money, but taking what do I have and saying, what do I really want to own? What do I need to own? And what can I borrow? And what can I get used from the library? So it's just that balancing of it all out. But there's a time to buy, and just figuring out what that is part of what we do, and that's what we love to do here. So these are some really great options. Do you have any other tips for us, Hope? What are some other things you did to save? I know you have so many good tips outside of even homeschooling with groceries.
Don't get her started. She's got
I mean,
300 videos.
You could talk about it forever because you have you have a wealth of ideas. And I know firsthand when we were teaching high school together, I would look over at your lunch almost every day and say, Hope, that lunch looks amazing. Like, I feel like you ordered that. Where did you get it? And she was always like, oh no, so I got this from a neighbor, and then I found this on sale at the store, and you are the queen of budget. So what are some other things you did kind of in a nutshell? And they can check out your YouTube channel to find out more about those in depth. But what are some things that you did to provide more money, to free up money for, curriculum or things that maybe are more important to purchase?
Well, I always tell people that frugality is not a choice between saving money and deprivation. Like, those aren't the same thing.
Yeah.
And so frugality in a nutshell is figuring out how to spend less on the areas that don't matter as much to you so that you do have the money available for the things that do matter to you. And so honestly, for homeschoolers, that's going to be making sure that we have an adequate homeschool budget and that we are teaching our kids well. So in order to do that, you're going to look at every other area of your budget and figuring out where are those areas where there's some give and take. We often talk about it like it's a colander. So you have all of your money going in the top, and then you've got these little holes that represent the areas, the parts of your budget.
Yeah.
But some holes are bigger than others, right? Your mortgage is probably bigger than your homeschool budget, I would assume. But so you can look at those holes and say, are there any holes that we can make just a little bit tighter, a little bit tighter? One of the things that Larry and I frequently did back then, and we still do, is what we call our 10% challenge. We would get our budget, and the goal is to set the timer for 20 minutes and just dialogue ways that we can cut budget areas back by 10%.
Just brainstorm.
Because that's not a huge, you can't walk in and say, kids, we're going to cut our grocery budget by 50%, because they're going to mutiny by day 3. But you can.
We're eating beans and rice again.
Exactly. Yeah, well, we're plant-based, so we eat a lot of beans and rice.
No shame there.
But you can figure out where to tighten up various areas of your budget so that you can funnel that money toward homeschooling. If you feel like your budget really is untenable for homeschooling, there are ways to get that from other areas of your budget.
Well, and some families too find curriculum that can be resold if you want to recoup some of your cost. And if you get these hardcover books that are more timeless, that are popular, that have a lot of bang for their buck, someone else said, hey, I'll give you half of what you paid for it.
That's
and that can go towards your next year's program.
And some of them don't change that often. They might update it every so often. And then others are updating every couple of years. But things like Saxon Math, I mean, many of those haven't changed since the 90s or
everyone wants them.
Early 2000s, so those are a good investment too. But there are so many things like that do provide that. One time you're spending more up front, but then really over time, it's averaging out to much less than you would have spent, if you bought around every time that you had a kiddo that was going through math.
And if you really want to know, call Rainbow Resource or call the manufacturer and say, hey, I have a second edition. You're on third edition. What's the real difference? I did that for Matthew C. one year, and they were like, it's 2 pages.
Yeah.
Really, it wasn't that many different. It wasn't that big of a
difference. And some are like worth the entire curriculum. It doesn't even seem like the same publisher anymore.
Right. Sometimes being compatible just is not an option. But these are all such good things. I'm wondering what you would think are some of the advantages to budgeting, because again, we often think of it as this is a limitation. Oh, I can't buy this. I can't have that. What are some of the biggest advantages that you've seen over the years to budgeting and being careful with what you spend?
Budgeting really is about wise stewardship, honestly. It's about making the best use of the funds that you have been entrusted with. And we want to make sure that we're making moves that not only, take care of us next week, but also take care of us next year and 10 years and 20 years from now. So budgeting allows you to literally take small amounts of money, because we had a very small budget. For reference, we raised 4 kids debt-free on an income which was consistently under the national U.S. average income, always. And
which is amazing. That says a lot right there. I mean, it really does. To be able to do that, and I think you paid off some pretty big things, and you guys did some amazing things during those beginning years.
We did. So we bought our current home with cash. So that was like our biggest, like that was the big thing that we did. But what it really taught us is the power of nickels and dimes. People look at a dime on the road and go, well, it's just a dime. But we figured out really early, because we didn't have very much left over, the power of taking that small amount of money and setting it aside. And over time, it did grow to a large amount of money. That is the power of budgeting, and knowing that you are making sure that you are preparing for now and preparing for the future.
That's such good advice. So I think a big takeaway is that, budgeting really isn't a limitation. It is an invitation to be more creative, be more resourceful.
More intentional.
Yeah.
Be intentional.
And it's kind of fun, to be honest with you.
It's like a
really,
game.
we loved it. We gamified everything in our house. And so we would have a goal, and we're like, how are we going to get there? And we would get the kids involved. And so really budgeting for us became something that was joyful. And that's why our line is living with a spirit of joy and abundance on a shoestring budget, because we never ever felt like we were needy. We knew that we were meeting our needs right now, and we were spending a lot of time with our kids, and we were having a blast doing it.
That's so awesome.
We just kind of call it, we're saying no to these things so we can say yes to this. Like our
Sometimes-
yes really matters, what we're saying yes to. Not what we're saying no to, here's what we're saying yes to.
And sometimes less really is more,
Yeah.
because you are more intentional. You are really appreciating what you've taken time to save for, what you've chosen, and you think of it differently than if you just buy all the sparkly things out there. So it's great. We have families who have charter funds, and that's wonderful. If you have them, that is great. It's a blessing. But I think that's another point, is that sometimes there's seasons we go through. We might have a season where for whatever reason, a job change or something has happened, and all of a sudden, okay, I've never really had to budget before, and now I'm not sure what to do. And we might have some families that are finding themselves in that circumstance now, where I've never really had to think about this, and now I'm not sure how to narrow this down. And that's part of what we like to do here at Rainbow. We love to help families narrow options down, think about, what might be a good fit for your family. We have a series of questions that we go through to help you get there, but we want you to find what's a good fit for your family. And so that's part of what we do here. So give us a call.
There are some programs that are very similar with a different price tag. We're saying, well, they're very, very similar in their approach and how they teach. This one's $20 cheaper. Like, okay, there we go. You know?
That's right. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you so much for joining us today. It has been wonderful having Hope with us. And Hope, tell us how we can find out more.
You can find me at my website, underthemedian.com, or on YouTube, we're at Under the Median.
A wealth of resources there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.